Let's talk about mastering. I'm going to show you how you can master your music in Cubase 11. What is going on? Chris Salim here from MIXDOWN Online. Okay, now let's jump right into it and talk about home mastering, how you can master your own music in any DAW and especially in Cubase 11. First, I just want to share with you a few tips regarding mastering. Mastering is the process that comes after the mix, the process that you do before you release your music to the world. And it's a process that a lot of self-produced musicians will struggle a lot with. So what I want to do here is to keep that process as simple as possible so you can start mastering your own music if this is something that you want to do. Now, my first suggestion is always to use the service of a mastering engineer to master your music. Most of the time, this is something that I do on my side. I use the service of a mastering engineer to master my mixes. And what I like about doing so is that I get an extra pair of ears to work on the music I just mixed. So for me, it's very practical, especially when I'm on a rush to get a master done after I'm done mixing. However, it will happen that I master my own mixes also, especially when I work on my own music. In that case, I'm going to make sure I have a few days off without listening to the mix before starting to master. And I'm talking about maybe 3-4 days, maybe a week in some case, where I make sure that I stay away from the mix before starting to master. This way, I can start the mastering process with a good, fresh pair of ears and distance myself from the mix. Okay, so this is something that I do all the time when I master my own music. I also want to point out a couple of things here. First, the quality of your monitoring system. When mastering, it is important to master with good quality professional studio monitors and also in a very good room, So if your room is treated, that's a plus. This is what you need to be able to master. Because put it like that, when you master a song, you need to be able to hear all the tiny details coming out of the music to make sure you make the right calls when mastering. Because this is super important. And a good monitoring system is going to help you a lot, and especially a good acoustically treated room. That is also very important in that case, because the room is going to influence your listening, the way you're going to listen and perceive the sound coming out of the speakers. So that's why it's super important to have a good room to work in when you master music. A tool that can help you if you have a good pair of studio monitors and a decent room as far as the acoustic treatment goes, you can also work with SonarWorks Reference 4. I talked about that before. I made a video actually about that software. It is a very cool plugin and software that will calibrate your speakers according to the acoustics of your room, and it's going to give you a flatter response out of your speakers. And this is actually very practical, especially when mastering. You can also use headphones. A good pair of professional studio headphones is also going to do the trick. The cool thing about that is that you remove the room out of the equation, and this is one of the benefits of working with headphones. But again, you need to have a good pair of studio headphones that are going to translate the frequency spectrum in a very balanced way. And you can also use SonarWorks for headphones. They have profiles for a bunch of headphones to give you a flatter response, which is also very practical. So that is something that you can work with. All right, enough talking. Now let's jump in Cubase and start mastering some music. Now we're in Cubase, and let me show you how I set things up. So I have the mixed version of the song I'm going to master on a stereo channel. If I'm mastering more than one song, let's say I'm mixing a bunch of songs part of the same project, like an EP or an album, each of those mixes are going to be on their own stereo channel. And I'm going to insert the same plugins on every channels. And I'm going to show you how I bounce that afterwards. And then I have on top, like I do when mixing, I have my reference track. If you want to know how to set that up in Cubase, just click on the link on top or down below. And also I have a marker track. Now, the marker track is not useful when I'm only mastering a single, but when I'm mastering a full album or an EP, this can be very useful. Again, I'm going to show that to you why later on. Now let's look at some tools that I have available that are useful when mastering in Cubase. First, that is new to Cubase 11 is the plugin Supervision, which is a reference plugin that will give you a graphic analyzer, also a LUFS meter, and so on, a bunch of different stuff that you have access to, which is quite useful. You also have access to this plugin with Cubase Artist, I believe, and of course the Pro version. If you have the Pro version, you also have the control room. I also made a video on that. If you want to watch it, I'm going to leave the link down below. And if you have Cubase Pro, we have the right zone where we have the meter section, which is going to give us different types of metering, including the loudness meter that I use a lot when mastering, which I also have set up here in the Supervision. Then we have the plugins. I'm going to keep things simple. I'm only going to use 3 plugins. One plugin is going to be for loudness, which is going to be my limiter. This will balance out the loudness level. Then we're going to have the equalizer, which is going to balance the frequency range, the tonal aspect of the master. I'm going to use frequency for this one. And then if needed, a compressor to work the dynamic balance of the master. So frequency is going to be the EQ I'm going to work with. This one is available on the Pro version of Cubase, but you can use any EQ that you want, okay? The Studio EQ, if you don't work with Pro, the Pro version of Cubase is going to work well. It's going to have less bands to work with, but worse comes to worse. If you need more bands, you can just insert one after the other. There's nothing wrong with that. And then we have the regular stock compressor, part of Cubase that I'm going to work with. So simple tools to give you a good start as far as mastering goes. But of course, mastering can be way more complicated than that, you know. But this is going to give you the basic tools you need to perform a simple mastering. Okay, so let's start with the limiter. I'm going to start by balancing the loudness right away. Okay, so what I'm going to do here to balance that out, I actually made a video on LUFS not too long ago. I'm going to link it down below. Now, the reason why I like to use a LUFS meter when mastering is because of streaming services. To make a long story short, again, I'm not going to dive deep into it. I already made a video on that. It's just the fact that the streaming services, most of them are going to normalize all masters to -14 LUFS. That's why I like to use this metering system to balance the loudness of my master. So let me show you how I work that out in Cubase. So I have, like I said, Supervision that will have a LUFS metering system, but I kind of like to use the one included on the right zone, which is a part of the metering system that we have on the Pro version of Cubase. So what I'm going to do now is to focus on the short-term value of the LUFS meter, and I'm going to play the loudest part of the song to do so. I'm going to bring the loudness level to maybe -11, -10, maybe -9 LUFS or so. The reason why I do so is very simple. If I focus only on the loudest part of the song, especially on this song that is actually quite dynamic, I have like quieter parts and louder parts, especially at the end, which is louder than the rest of the song. Spotify and all streaming services, which are set up to normalize all masters to -14 LUFS, they actually look at the integrated LUFS value, which is going to be the average loudness level of the full master. So that's why I'm only focusing on the louder part of the song, because the short-term value is, it's an average of loudness for maybe a range of 3 seconds or so. So it's actually pretty precise to the part I'm listening to. So that's why I'm focusing on this short-term value. And then my average integrated value is going to be closer to the LUFS level of streaming services like Spotify. With that said, it doesn't mean that you can't master your song loud. You can if you want. That's a personal choice at some point. If your song sounds good loud, master it loud. If it doesn't, you know, you have a very good range to work with. On my side, I kind of like to master the loudest part of the song at -10 to -9 LUFS. So this way, I'm sure that my song is going to be loud enough, and even it's going to be brought down by streaming services, it's not going to be too quiet, you know, and this is something important for me. So I would rather have a master that is brought down by 2-3 dBs than the other way around. So that's how I do it. So let's balance the loudness level with the limiter, the stock limiter out of Cubase. let's start with that. We're going to look at the tonal balance and the dynamic balance, and we'll come back to the loudness. But at least I have a good starting point. Okay, so now let's look at the equalization with frequency. So this is what I did for this mix. Now, in mastering, you don't need to do a lot. Every tiny move is going to show, okay, especially with equalization. What I did here is just a small high-pass filter at 30 hertz. And then I have a cut at 279 hertz and also one at 450 hertz. It's a cut of 1.5 dB, not a lot, very subtle. A higher Q than the default value, so a bit narrow as far as the Q goes. And also I have a boost at 4K, a tiny boost of 1 dB at 4K to add just a bit of edge. And then a boost for the top end, one at 8.5 of 1.3 dB, and one high shelf at 13K, a boost of 1 dB. Nothing too major. Very simple, but effective. I'm going to bypass frequency and let's listen to it before and after. Tiny moves, but it shows a lot, okay? So something important to understand before doing some drastic moves. In mastering, everything is subtle. So this is what I have as far as my tonal balance goes. I like it the way it is. And then let's look at the dynamic balance for this mix. This song, like I said earlier, has quieter parts and louder parts. So the end part is louder than everything else. What I decided to do, just to bring more balance as far as the dynamics goes, is to use a volume automation just for the end part. So just to bring down the end part by maybe 0.75 dB, not a lot, but just enough to balance things out with the end of the song. That works pretty well, okay? If I listen to the middle part, okay, so that's actually pretty good. Just to bring that a notch better, I'm gonna add a compressor. The irregular stock plugin out of Cubase, basic compressor, the standard compressor actually, where I have a 2:1 ratio, a 75 milliseconds of attack time, super slow attack time, auto release, so it's going to give me a very transparent compression, and gain reduction, it's probably at around 1 dB or so. Let's listen to the end part, which is the loudest part. Okay, so, there's not a lot there. I can actually bring that lower just a bit, and I think that's going to be good. And this is going to help for the general dynamic balance of this song. So in some cases like this, compressor can be useful. Now, something else that I did as far as automation goes, and again, it's not something that I do all the time, but it's very useful when needed, is a EQ automation. If I go back to frequency, for the most part of the song, I have a boost at 4K, and I actually bypass that boost for the end part of the song, just because the electric guitar, the solo guitar was a bit edgy. And by bypassing the boost, it helped the guitar to sound a bit more smoother. So let's go back to the limiter for final adjustments. Okay, so that sounds pretty good so far. And let's say I have several songs to master. Like I said earlier, those songs are going to be on their own stereo channel. And I will, in that case, probably copy the same EQ preset and adjust from that point, so all the songs can work well together. And this is what a mastering engineer is going to do when working on the several songs for the same project. He's going to make sure that all songs work well together. So he's going to look at the big picture as far as the project goes on top of all the individual songs. So if at this point you are ready to bounce, okay, so very simple again, like you do for a mix, you just set up your left and right locators by selecting, in my case, my master event. Click on P, and that is going to set up the left and right locators. And then I'm going to click on Export Audio Mixdown, which is going to be found, I have a shortcut, but this one is going to be found under File and Export and Audio Mixdown. This is where I'm going to be able to export the master. Now, something you can do if you work with several songs, once you're done mastering the entire project, you can set up cycles on a marker track. So I'm going to select the first song, make sure I have my left and right locators. I'm going to click on this Add Cycle Marker. And I'm going to have a marker for this song. I'm going to do the same for the second one. Click on P, and there you go. The third one, and so on. Then I'm going to click on Control M. That will bring up the markers window, and I'm going to just add a name for each song in the description part. So song 1, song 2, and so on. And the last thing I need to do when I'm ready to bounce, I go back to the Export Audio Mixdown. And from the Export Audio Mixdown, I'm going to be able to bounce everything in one shot, which is very, very cool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select for the export range, I'm going to select Cycle Markers. So I'm going to select Song 1. I'm going to name it accordingly to the title of the song itself. I'm going to make sure that all my file format are okay. Do the same with the second one and then add to queue and so forth. And that's it. I'm ready to export and I just click on Start Queue Export. So that is a very cool feature part of Cubase 11. So there you go, my friend. This is how you can master your song in a very simple way using Cubase 11. Now, of course, mastering goes way deeper than what I showed you today. This is only the basic stuff. So that's why I always suggest to use the service of a professional mastering engineer. But if you want to master your song on your own, that is going to be a very good way to start. And also, if you want to just learn more about mastering, there's very good resources out there. And my good friend Ian Shepherd is a very good resource as far as mastering goes. He actually made a very cool series with Sound on Sound and not too long ago. I'm going to link that down below. So if you want to know more about mastering, you have to watch those videos. They are amazing. All right, my friends, this is going to be it for today. If you have any comments or questions, leave everything down below. And don't forget to share, to like, and to subscribe to this channel if you are new here. Until next time, take care and see you.